The mockery. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council stretched wider than any stadium on Earth. Its crystalline walls caught and reflected starlight from 1,000 systems, creating an ethereal glow that the member species claimed represented universal harmony. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the center of it all, a lone human figure surrounded by beings who had never known true struggle. She knew this would be humanity's last diplomatic attempt. After today, there would be no more words. The Seraphim Collective floated above their designated platforms, their gaseous forms shifting between colors that supposedly conveyed emotion. The architect species sat motionless in their geometric shells, calculating probabilities with biological computers that ran through their exoskeletons. The harmony singers, tall creatures with vocal cords that could produce 5 simultaneous tones, hummed softly in what they considered neutral frequencies. All of them looked at Sarah with the same expression despite their vastly different anatomies. It was pity, mixed with amusement. Chancellor Vex of the Meridian Empire rose from his seat. His species had founded the Council 8,000 years ago, and they still acted like they owned it. His forearms spread wide in a gesture of mock welcome. Ambassador Chen, Earth has requested this emergency session for the 7th time in 3 cycles. We have heard your complaints about trade restrictions. We have listened to your concerns about territorial disputes. The Council has been patient with your young species, but this constant aggression grows tiresome. Sarah didn't move. She had practiced this moment 100 times in her quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel. Every word had been chosen carefully by Earth's united governments. This wasn't just her speaking. It was the voice of 8 billion humans who had been pushed too far. Chancellor Vex, the Galactic Council has systematically denied humanity access to hyperspace lanes. You've blocked our colony ships from settling on uninhabited worlds. You've imposed technology sanctions that have caused suffering on our outer colonies. We've tried diplomacy. We've followed your procedures. We've filed our complaints through proper channels. A ripple of what passed for laughter among the harmony singers filled the chamber. Their representative, a being called Melodic Truth, stood gracefully. Young species always struggle with the concept of earned privilege. Humanity has existed as a spacefaring civilization for barely 200 years. The Council has maintained peace for 8 millennia. Perhaps if Earth focused less on expansion and more on spiritual development, you would understand why restrictions are necessary. Sarah's jaw tightened. She had expected this. They always fell back on their age, their supposed wisdom. They couldn't see that their peace was built on the suppression of younger species, keeping them weak and dependent. We're not asking for your approval anymore. This is a final notice. Remove the restrictions on human expansion within 30 standard days, or we will remove them ourselves. The chamber erupted, not in anger or fear, but in amusement. The Seraphim Collective's representative pulsed with what their species considered laughter, a bright orange glow that hurt human eyes. Ambassador Chen, are you threatening the Galactic Council? Your entire fleet consists of 200 vessels. The Council maintains a peacekeeping force of 50,000 ships. Your population is 8 billion. Our combined population exceeds 4 trillion. What exactly do you think humanity could do? Sarah pulled out a small device from her pocket. It was nothing special to look at, just a standard human communicator. But what it represented was everything. You've observed our ships. You've counted our weapons. You've measured our resources. But you've never understood humans. We don't need superior numbers. We don't need ancient wisdom. We have something you've forgotten in your 8,000 years of peace. She pressed a button on the device. Nothing visible happened, but she knew the message had been sent. Earth would receive it in minutes through quantum entanglement communication, a technology the Council didn't even know humanity had developed. We have desperation. We have anger. And we have absolutely nothing left to lose. Chancellor Vex's translation device crackled with what might have been disdain. This session is concluded. Earth's request is denied. Again. Perhaps in another 1,000 years, when humanity has matured, we can revisit this discussion. He turned to leave, his forearms folding in a gesture of dismissal. Sarah's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. There won't be another discussion. When you look back on this moment, remember that we tried. Remember that we warned you. Remember that you laughed. She walked out of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. Behind her, the various species continued their discussions, already forgetting about Earth's insignificant threat. They had heard similar words from a dozen young species over the millennia. All of them had eventually learned their place. Humanity would be no different. 3 weeks later, Admiral Marcus Torres stood on the bridge of the ESS Resilience, humanity's flagship. It wasn't the largest ship in Earth's fleet, but it was the meanest. Built in secret shipyards hidden in asteroid fields equipped with weapons developed in black sites that officially didn't exist, it represented humanity's true capabilities. Around him, 200 similar vessels hung in the void, dark and silent. The Council's observers would never detect them. Stealth technology was something the ancient species had never needed to develop. After all, who would dare attack them? Admiral, all ships report ready, Lieutenant Commander Yuki Tanaka announced from her station. Operation Shatterpoint is green across the board. Marcus nodded. He had served in Earth's military for 30 years, fighting in the resource wars, the colony rebellions, and a dozen other conflicts the Council had dismissed as primitive squabbles. Humans knew war. They had been shaped by it, refined by it. The Council knew peace, and peace had made them soft. Send the signal to all battle groups. We move in 10 minutes. He turned to his crew, men and women who had volunteered for what might be a suicide mission. The Council thinks we're barbarians. They think we're children throwing a tantrum. They're about to learn that humans don't make empty threats. The first strike came without warning. The Council's monitoring station at the edge of the Meridian system simply vanished. One moment it was there, broadcasting its endless stream of data about trade routes and ship movements. The next, it was expanding clouds of superheated gas. The relativistic kill vehicle that destroyed it had been launched weeks ago, a simple, tungsten rod accelerated to 90% the speed of light. No shields could stop it. No warnings could outrun it. Within hours, 17 more monitoring stations across Council space met the same fate. The careful network that had watched over the galaxy for millennia was blind in less than a day. By the time the Council realized they were under attack, humanity's fleet had already moved to Phase 2. The trade hub at Nexus Point was considered the jewel of the Council's economic system. Thousands of ships from hundreds of species passed through it daily, exchanging goods and information in a dance of commerce that had continued uninterrupted for 3,000 years. The human fleet arrived like wolves among sheep. They didn't destroy the station. That would have been wasteful. Instead, they took it. Human Marines trained in zero-gravity combat that the Council considered obsolete stormed through the corridors. The station's security, used to dealing with minor disputes, and drunk traders folded in minutes. Within 6 hours, humanity controlled the economic heart of Council space. Admiral Torres stood in the station's command center, looking at the terrified faces of the captured administrators. They were architects, beings of logic and calculation. They couldn't process what had happened. It didn't fit their models. Send this message to the Council, he ordered. Nexus Point is now under human control. All trade will continue as normal with one change. 20% of all commerce will be redirected to Earth and her colonies. Consider it payment for 2 centuries of oppression. The administrator's shell pattern shifted and what Torres had learned was distress. This is impossible. The Council will respond. Their fleet will retake the station. Torres smiled, an expression that most species found deeply unsettling. They're welcome to try. But while they're mobilizing their ancient fleet, we'll be taking 3 more hubs. You see, the Council made one fatal error. They assumed their peace was unbreakable. They never prepared for someone who was willing to break it. The Reckoning. The Council's emergency session was chaos. For the first time in 3 millennia, member species were shouting at each other. The harmonious frequencies of the singers were discordant. The Seraphim Collective's representatives flickered between angry reds and fearful purples. Chancellor Vex stood at the central podium, his forearms trying to gesture for order, but no one was listening. "How did primitives take Nexus Point?" demanded the crystalline hegemon, their faceted form, reflecting the panic in the room. "Where was our fleet? Where were our defenses?" "The humans hit 17 monitoring stations simultaneously," reported the Meridian intelligence officer, their voice shaking. "We didn't know they had relativistic weapons. We didn't know they had stealth technology. We didn't even know they had a fleet positioned to strike." The Harmony Singer representative's five-toned voice rose above the chaos. "This is what comes of ignoring warnings. The humans told us they would act, and we laughed." Chancellor Vex finally managed to restore some order. "The Council fleet is mobilizing. 40,000 ships will converge on Nexus Point within the week. Humanity's 200 vessels will be overwhelmed." A new voice cut through the discussion. It was Ambassador Sarah Chen, appearing on the main communication screen. She was no longer in diplomatic robes but wearing the dark uniform of Earth's military. Behind her, human officers worked at stations that had once belonged to the Council. "Chancellor, Vex distinguished representatives," she began, her tone formal but cold. "I'm calling to discuss terms." "Terms?" Vex's translation device practically spat the word. "You've committed an act of war against the Galactic Council. There will be no terms except your unconditional surrender." Sarah's expression didn't change. "Let me clarify our position. In the past 72 hours, humanity has taken control of 4 major trade hubs. We've destroyed every monitoring station along the primary hyperspace routes. Your fleet, while numerically superior, is scattered across 8,000 light-years of space. By the time you concentrate your forces, we'll control the economic lifelines of 30 species." "Impossible," the architect administrator interjected, their logical mind running calculations. "You don't have the ships or resources for such an operation." "No," Sarah agreed. "We don't. But we don't need to hold everything. We just need to break enough of your system that it collapses under its own weight." She gestured to someone off-screen, and new data appeared on the display. "These are the current trade flow disruptions. 17% of all commerce has already been affected. Your economic models, which I know the architects are running right now, will show that a 25% disruption will cause a cascade failure. We're 7% away from that threshold." The chamber fell silent. Every species present could feel the truth in her words. The Council's peace had created a complex, interdependent system. It was efficient and harmonious, but it was also fragile. Humanity wasn't trying to conquer the galaxy. They were holding a knife to its throat. "What do you want?" Chancellor Vex asked, his voice subdued. "What we've always wanted," Sarah replied. "Equal access to hyperspace routes. The right to colonize uninhabited worlds without Council approval. Removal of all technology sanctions. Full membership in the Council with voting rights equal to any other species." "These demands are outrageous," the Seraphim representative pulsed. "Humanity has been spacefaring for mere centuries. Full membership requires millennia of peaceful development." Sarah's smile was sharp. "Your peaceful development is built on the suppression of younger species. How many civilizations have you kept locked in their home systems? How many have stagnated under your restrictions? We're not asking anymore. We're taking what should have been ours from the beginning." On the ESS Resilience, Admiral Torres watched the Council debate through intercepted communications. His tactical officer, Commander Avel Kofi, approached with a report. "Sir, the Kral Confederacy is withdrawing their ships from the Council fleet. They're declaring neutrality." Marcus nodded. He had expected this. The Kral were warriors who had been forced into the Council's peace 3,000 years ago. They understood strength and they recognized what humanity was doing. What about the others? The Void Dancers are requesting safe passage for their trade ships. They're offering to pay the 20% tax without protest. The Silicon Mines are calculating probabilities, but our intelligence suggests they're considering a separate peace. It was working. The Council's unity, built over 8 millennia, was cracking in days. Humanity didn't need to defeat 40,000 ships. They just needed to make the cost of fighting higher than the cost of accepting human demands. 3 days later, the first Council fleet arrived at Nexus Point. 5,000 ships, more firepower than humanity had ever faced. Admiral Torres stood, ready, his fleet positioned not to defend the station, but to attack. The Council expected a defensive battle, a siege they could win with overwhelming numbers. They didn't understand human military doctrine. All ships, execute Wolfpack Alpha, Torres commanded. The human fleet scattered, each ship taking a different vector. They didn't stand and fight. They ran, and as they ran they launched weapons, not at the Council fleet but at the infrastructure around them. Fuel depots, communication relays, navigation beacons, all the invisible systems that kept the Council's civilization running. The Council fleet commander, a Meridian admiral with 4,000 years of experience, watched in horror as humanity ignored his ships entirely. They could chase the humans, but at relativistic speeds, pursuit would take them away from defending their infrastructure. They could stay and protect the systems, but then the humans would strike elsewhere. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "the humans are targeting civilian infrastructure. This violates all rules of warfare." The Admiral's forearms clenched in frustration. "What rules? The humans never signed our conventions. They're not fighting our war. They're fighting their own." Back on Earth, the population watched the news with a mixture of pride and fear. They had supported the government's decision to act, tired of being treated as second-class citizens of the galaxy. But now, seeing the reality of war, some wondered if they had gone too far. President Elena Rodriguez addressed the planet from the United Earth Government headquarters in Geneva. "Citizens of Earth and all human colonies, we stand at a crossroads. The Galactic Council believed we would accept eternal servitude in exchange for their version of peace. They were wrong. We are not conquerors. We are not destroyers. We are humans, and we will accept nothing less than equality among the stars." The war, if it could be called that, lasted 3 more weeks. The Council's fleet, massive and powerful, couldn't adapt to human tactics. They were organized for grand battles, for maintaining order, for showing force. Humanity fought with guerrilla tactics adapted for space, hitting and running, never giving the enemy a solid target. More species withdrew from the conflict. The trading consortium, seeing their profits evaporate, declared that they would recognize any government that could restore commerce. The scholarly collective, dedicated to knowledge above politics, announced they would share technology with any species, regardless of Council membership. Finally, Chancellor Vex called for another emergency session. This time, Sarah Chen appeared, in person, flanked by human Marines in power armor. The symbolism was clear. Humanity could go anywhere, strike anywhere. "The Council is prepared to discuss terms," Vex said, his voice heavy with defeat. Sarah nodded. "Our terms haven't changed. Full membership, equal access, no restrictions. And if we refuse? Then we continue. Your choice, Chancellor. Peace with equality or war without end." The vote was called. For the first time in 8,000 years, it wasn't unanimous, but it passed. Humanity would be granted full membership in the Galactic Council, the youngest species ever to achieve such status. As Sarah left the chamber, the Crawl representative approached her. The massive warrior's mandibles clicked in what their species considered approval. "You fought well. The Council needed to remember that peace without justice is just oppression with a smile." Sarah nodded. "We didn't want war. We wanted fairness. Sometimes you have to fight for both." 6 months later, the galaxy had adapted to the new reality. Human traders moved freely through hyperspace routes. Human colonies spread to distant worlds. Human technology, developed in secret and refined by necessity, was traded openly. The Moor Council still existed, but it was different. Younger species had seen what was possible. The ancient powers had learned that their peace was not invincible. Admiral Torres retired after the war, returning to Earth to teach at the military academy. In his final lecture, he told his students, "The Council thought we were bluffing because they couldn't imagine anyone would risk everything for freedom. They forgot that humans have always been willing to pay that price. We didn't tear their peace apart. We showed them it was already broken. The galaxy would never be the same. The 8,000-year peace was over, replaced by something more, chaotic but more honest. Species competed and cooperated based on merit, not on age or tradition. It wasn't perfect, but it was fair. And for humanity, that was enough.